Okay, yeah, I'm here with Ian, and I have like a kind of a loose quote from Rousseau's Emile. So this is maybe one of the less famous of his books, but I think the biggest of the books. And this is on education, and he gets into it's kind of like Plato's Republic, where it's about education, but also about sort of how to live, and also political philosophy. And so yeah, there's this uh kind of loose quote that you and I had kind of shared a little bit, and I'll go ahead and just read what I wrote down in my journal, and then we'll kind of talk about it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I've never read any Rousseau and I've never read Emile, so I'll probably be asking you a bunch of questions.
Yeah,
This
of
will be good.
course. Yeah. So Rousseau's principal aim in teaching his ideal pupil, Emile, that he sort of sets up for this hypothetical uh, kind of thought experiment. So his principal aim in teaching Emile is to feel and love the beautiful of all sorts, is to fix his affection and taste on it, to prevent his natural appetites from becoming corrupted, and so he does not one day seek in his riches the means for being happy. He has said elsewhere that taste is only the art of knowing all about petty things. We learn to fill life with the good things within our reach and all the truth they can have for us. So, yeah. Did you have any initial thoughts on that or questions?
I mean, I think it's the whole context of the book as I understand it from that quote is interesting. So he's creating a Rousseau is creating a sort of imaginary idealized pupil. So it's sort of
Mhm.
like if 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 I was to teach a student who responded exactly the way I wanted to, so there wasn't any additional complicating factors, just to kind of simplify it, this is how I
Mhm.
would do it. That's kind of
Mhm.
the idea behind that. And that's that whole
Yeah.
book. I could
Yeah.
see it being
Yeah.
like an essay, but that's a huge book.
Yeah. And it's like Plato's Republic a little bit where, yeah, this is, you set up a structure and a situation so that you can then have a thought experiment based on that. So,
Mm,
and then of
mm,
course, just like Plato's Republic, he goes far afield talking about various things and kind of gives you a basis for like in basis for kind of interpreting modernity. So personally, your life philosophy, political science, relations between the sexes, all that kind of stuff.
wow.
Um, and yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And even in this quote, I mean, one thing that you can notice is that one thing you might know about Rousseau and that he's famous for is that there's this constant refrain to nature. So it's this, this idea that he whatever wherever we go in modernity with scientific knowledge or liberal political philosophies, we're always connected to nature. And he thinks, when you're close to nature and you're not corrupting, human beings with too many other sort of strains of thinking, that you'll generally go towards happiness of the group or the individual.
I like that. It sort of, I don't know, presupposes or it kind of hints at this idea that like things as they are will naturally develop in a healthy way, kind of an inherent goodness, so to speak,
Yeah,
to creation, to the structure of reality.
yeah, that's right.
That's cool. That's cool. I definitely agree with that myself. I think if we ask ourselves those kinds of questions, like, is nature is our nature, human nature, the nature of the world, is it inherently good or inherently bad? Um, you don't always have to ask yourself that question, but when you do, you kind of have to choose good, or it's very sort of hopeless. If the nature of the world is inherently evil, then even if you try to do good, you're always struggling. You're always, you're always sort of trying to make up for something. And I think there's something unnatural about that because if you're always trying to make up for something, you can't ever just rest and be, which seems like a lot of spiritual practices kind of encourage us, whether it's prayer, whether it's, sort of a mystic Christianity, or Buddhism, obviously Buddhism, meditation. They all seem to kind of point to like the ability to just be, which is what Rousseau's talking about, to just be without anything on top of it, so that we can kind of uh, return to that stillness, that original stillness that we come out of. Um, so yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't know. I don't know how much he dives into the Buddhist tropes, but it lines up with Buddhism pretty nicely to me from what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. I'm reading. I mean, reading this book, Emile. I think it reminds me of Eastern philosophy and Buddhism a lot. Like one thing he says is that most of the important virtues are negative. So the
Hmm.
idea
Like,
of
what does that mean? Like, how do you unpack that?
like I think he means it's not about do being good but not being bad. So it's and so
Hmm.
that's like that returning to the natural state or yeah, not uh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
not about yeah, counteracting a bad, but just not having bad things on yeah, just not a sorry, I'm not being very articulate, but not being good so much as letting go of bad.
Yeah. Just kind of realizing that the problems arise from, at least this is how I would word it, obviously, because I haven't read the book, but problems and badness in general arises from sort of a something being in the way or something unharmonic. And so being able to kind of smooth that out or return it to harmony, it stops us from being a kind of like perfectionist. Because if goodness is something you have to seek and achieve, then you can always push harder and harder, and it gets kind of stressful at that point. And I think a lot of people sort of unconsciously are stuck in that loop, given a lot of our moral background and structure in our current society. When
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I think Rousseau's saying he seems to be saying something like that.
Mhm.
Um,
When was he writing?
this was in the 1600s. I
Okay.
don't remember specific years. I know yeah, he mentions like one of the examples he gives is of this young prodigy uh that's that's a little kid at the time that's kind of the sensation in his world. And then the translator notes he's talking about Mozart. So he's older than Mozart. So
Fair enough. But he was around when Mozart was around, so we're talking that
mm,
like late Renaissance, early Enlightenment kind of
yeah, yeah,
high
he's yeah,
high
early
culture.
modernity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, cool. Do you know anything about his background?
Yeah. Well, so he's Genevan, speaks French also. So he looks often to Geneva as kind of like a modern day Sparta, where it's very independent and full of virtue, kind of strong state. There was some religious wars at that time that I think got him and his father kicked out at some point. And this was a pattern in his life because of his political writings and sort of maybe criticism of the church and things, getting kicked out of a couple of countries, having to flee a few times. Um, but so I think his mother died early in his life and his father raised him, but then he was kind of left or almost neglected or kicked out of the house or something almost by his father by the time he was like a teen. And he ended up kind of wandering around a little bit, being raised by this lady who helped to educate him, but also kind of became his lover later on. this
Oh,
French
wow.
lady. Yeah.
All right.
And uh and then yeah, he was kind of self-educated to some extent. I think he got a religious education, he got a musical education. He's a very talented person. But I think he started his writing career kind of late. He was maybe in his 30s or 40s, and he just happened by chance or something to see this advertisement for um, this writing contest, and the theme that the contestants were to write on was something about the effect of modernity and science or something. Has it's something like maybe has science had an overall positive or negative effect on humanity?
Hmm.
And that was like a turning point in his life, and that really kind of the wheels really started going in his head, and he started his writing career from there and kind of became one of the most famous political philosophers of all time eventually, and very controversial figure. He married a woman who is not literati type person at all. She may have been kind of literate, um, and he 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 also he's very famous for kind of Samuel Johnson said that Rousseau was a very bad man because he abandoned his five kids actually. Like when they were babies, like he just each one of them he just kind of got rid of each of them,
Wow.
uh, put them in the orphanage. But I've read that people generally knew they had a low chance of survival if you kind of put them in an orphanage. It's very bad kind of conditions. But he made his money by copying music. He also wrote operas. He wrote something like six operas and one of them remained in the canon for like 100 years. I mean, he's a very, very accomplished person. He ended up in his later life studying and writing about botany. He wrote a series of letters back and forth between an English botanist that ended up becoming like a biology textbook at Cambridge or Oxford or something.
Wow.
So that's just a very rough kind of thing. And then I think he died um, in relatively peaceful circumstances, although it seemed like there was some kind of paranoia about his being pursued by authorities or disloyal friends. He seemed to have some paranoia to his mind, but he was also chased out of countries and things, so there was some basis for that. And then, of course, he had that unstable home life early on in his life. Um, but yeah, I think there's some irony to his death too, where I think he was walking on a street and there was like a nobleman with his carriage and like this giant Great Dane walking beside it, and then they kind of like pushed him to the side of the road, and he ended up falling and hitting his head and getting a hemorrhage and dying from that. So it's just kind of funny that he wrote kind of about equality, political equality, and then he ended up being killed by this sort of accident with this rich nobleman, something.
Yeah, just kind of a the careless rich.
Seemingly, it
Yeah.
it it
Yeah.
the image, yeah, the image is of that, yeah, this carriage and this giant dog, this rich people kind of knocking the commoners over, make way. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, obviously, the truth of it we'll never know, but
Yeah,
the mythology of the man is always interesting to investigate.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, what was it about this particular quote that like really stuck out to you? I mean, you have it in your journal. You texted it to me and was like, "Hey, this is interesting." Like,
Mm.
I think it's interesting too, but while you were reading the book, something sort of stuck out to you to bother to note it down in that way. So,
Mm. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm into deep kinds of philosophical inquiry and kind of Platonic depth and ascent. But Rousseau is very different in some ways. He's more like Epicurean, kind of about having a pleasant life in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
And that's what this quote is. It seems to be about, but also about how do you develop towards that. So, he says the principal aim in teaching Emile from a young age to feel and love the beautiful of all sorts is to fix his affection and taste on it and prevent his natural appetites from becoming corrupted. So I guess, yeah, the idea is in general, we tend to maybe know a lot theoretically about what is a good life and how to live, what it looks like, but it's hard to get there, because we have lots of little things that might distract us that, uh YouTube or lots of things that kind of get us to end up living a life that we don't think is really fits that image.
Hmm.
And so I thought this quote kind of told us, kind of gives you a little bit of how that might happen by from an early age or earlier on anyway to fix your uh emotions and your taste on good things. One thing that Rousseau talks about is how how the beautiful can lead to the good.
Hmm.
And that's an interesting idea for me. I wonder about, yeah, the salutary nature of the beautiful and the effect that beauty can have on us. And of course, there's a big kind of link there with the modern world and how we don't really emphasize beauty anymore. It's almost like we're against beauty in some way. On the one hand, there's the sort of rational utilitarian perspective where we're emphasizing those things. Uh, and a lot of that is to relieve suffering, like from hunger or from inconvenience and things like that. But we're kind of seems like we don't have this idea that the package should still be have some visual and otherwise harmony to it. And on the other hand, there's maybe just this maybe postmodern-ish idea against maybe suspicion of beauty, or the thing we should really be focusing on is like the deep structural problems in society or things like that, and maybe beauty, which makes us feel life is a good thing or a pleasant thing, is sort of a distractor. So,
Hmm. 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 Yeah, that's interesting. I don't go around in postmodernist circles very much, but I'm familiar with, some of the theories. I mean, back when we were in college, that was kind of the pervading,
yeah.
leading edge of cultural exploration. And the I always kind of forget about that sort of like the mistrust of beauty. Because it's interesting because if you're talking about cultural theory, you you have in those decades, sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, a lot of what falls under the category of things that used to be considered beautiful, art, music, architecture, stuff like that. Um, the values in those disciplines seem to become, you might say, more shallow, just culturally speaking, or you might say less refined, because you can't compare Mozart to the Beatles. It's not the same thing. Um, that's not necessarily to say that one is better or not. Um, but if we're talking about beauty as a goal, as an aspiration to cultivate in the world, then like I don't know, when I was growing up, if you were like, "Oh, that's beautiful," or the first thing that comes to mind in my head when I think of that word is like a pretty lady. Oh, she's so beautiful, And if we're talking about someone being good looking and we're talking about a finely constructed church that inspires one to sort of sit in awe at the beauty of the world and man's ability to reflect it and refine it, and the stories that just the creation of something beautiful tells us about ourselves and our own potential and the potential of life and sort of the upliftedness of the spirit. Like,
Mm.
I don't get that. But if we're talking about like a beautiful lady, well, maybe she's trying to sell me a hamburger, or maybe she's trying to, get me to drink some beer or something. And that's the kind of beauty I can see it being worth saying, don't trust it. It's a
Mm.
facade. It
Yeah.
it hooks you, it hooks something. It makes you sort of associate the as a straight man, it makes you associate the sexual feelings of, oh, she's looking at the camera, she's smiling at me, I feel good.
Yeah.
Therefore, this beer must be good because we don't take the time to differentiate those out. It's just the
Yeah.
advertisement hits us and it hits us on that sort of instinctual level, and there's a response from it. So if we're not
Yeah.
really media literate, then these appeals of beauty towards our more basic natures, our more animal natures, which gets us away from Rousseau because now I'm talking about like the natural animalistic thing. But I think it's still a corrupting influence on those things rather than
Yeah,
that those
that's
things
I
are
think
corrupting.
that's yeah, yeah, I think that's Rousseau. Yeah.
Yeah. But just I'm sorry, I just to kind of finish it up,
Mm.
that like the beauty the beauty that we are being suspicious of in that case um, is not the same beauty as a cathedral or a tree even. I mean, I find the structure of a tree, if you really take the time to just be still and look at it, and you see and you realize what you're looking at, that this was once just this little sprout and it grew, and it's like it's growing outwards to efficiently maximize its solar intake, but
Mm.
it's doing so in a way that like all the parts support the other parts,
Mm.
and and each branch just sort of randomly grows in the way that it grows, but then also has a relationship to the other branches, so that like the ones that are higher up kind of spread out and the ones that are on top, it's just an amazing thing. It's like if you can see the dance of the tree's growth as it became what it is, reflected in every element of its shape, like that's a beautiful thing. And our
Mm.
lives can be like that.
Mm.
And when we remember that, we don't put up with as much bullshit, and it kind of can give us some bravery. It can, like, remembering what's possible is, I think, something that's sorely missing, whether it's postmodernism or modernism. Remembering the what's available to us in nature and what we're able to sort of extract from nature informationally, like what we're able to learn about how
Mm.
these things go together by that kind of relationship, that kind of return to nature, that sort of return to the fact that we are nature, we are built of these same structures that build these beautiful things, and how can we let them impact, influence, inspire us to do similar things with our own lives, instead of, well, I just got to go work 9 to 5 and sit in the car and listen to talk radio that makes me really angry because because we mistrust the beauty of an inspired soul, because we mistrust that there could be something meaningful that isn't purely subjective and pointless,
Yeah.
or so objective that it doesn't speak to us. Like, it seems like we're stuck between those two things, but life exists in the middle. That's where real beauty is, real. joy, real goodness, real truth. It's all anyway. Now I'm up on a soapbox.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, yeah, we do need to, I mean, you do need to know about, as you mentioned, the possibility of bullshit, and people do use like Vervaeke talks about, John Vervaeke, people use whatever is grabs our attention, which would be a lot of things. We have some sense of beauty, especially physical attraction and things. And yeah, people will use that in I don't know if it's cynical, but oftentimes it is. But anyway, yeah, it's bullshit. It's using parts of ourselves that are maybe better, I think better used for other purposes. Obviously, physical attraction has a natural purpose, and also it can be used not just for the natural purpose of procreation and some kind of harmonious community, but even making beautiful statues or something like that, like the Greeks did, or whatever, and yeah, not to sell you something that's not really very good for you, and that and maybe leave you feeling a little used because of that. But yeah, we
Yeah,
do have to be kind of suspicious of the human uses of beauty.
yeah, yeah, because it leaves us like it leaves us so one-dimensional, right? Like, oh, like if you're paying attention to the depth of a person's soul and the way they appreciate the world and who they are and what they do in the world, you can find beauty in there that's
Mm,
reflected in the way they look, that like the physicality isn't necessarily apart from that. But if you're only focused on the symmetry of the features or
mm,
the size of the curves or the size of the muscles or
mm,
the strength of the jawline or whatever it is. um it's not that appreciating those things are wrong, it's that appreciating them without tuning into like other dimensions of the person or other dimensions of reality at the same time. um just it leaves you hungry. It leaves you like it's not satisfying in the way, and it doesn't create that sense of awe or of appreciation or of like respect, you know. Yeah, which is a shame. A shame.
yeah.
Because that's our birthright. I think that's what Rousseau's talking about with that naturalness.
Mm. Yeah, I was yeah, when you were so you're sort of talking about maybe sexual objectification of another person, and then I was thinking about how I think even attraction, though, tends to have something to do with the non-physical things, especially I think of women for men, but I think including of men for women, um, where, like as a guy, a woman could be really attractive at first, but you get ideas about her after that, or impressions of her, and yeah, ideas about who she is, and your attraction could go up or down depending on how she acts or even the sound of her voice, but especially things about her personality, about her interests, about who she is. And yeah, I think even in attraction there is it's more than even attraction is more than skin deep.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think we often culturally, I think there's this sense of like, oh, if I just checked all the right boxes, I'd be in a happy relationship. And like, and then you check the boxes and you're in the relationship if you're lucky, because a lot of people just don't. They dream too big, or they don't try hard enough, or they get tongue-tied when they shouldn't, or whatever happens. Or they just think they can't, and so they just sit in their room in their sad all the time, which I understand.
Mm,
Um, but even if you're lucky enough to check all the boxes, um, you might find that it's not what you thought it was going to be, because you were holding on to this concept, which is just this mental thing of like, oh, if it looks like this, then it will generate happiness for me, which is
yeah.
part of like the consumer's tendency of like buy a
Right.
thing, get a thing. We've talked
Yeah.
about that in the past.
Yeah.
Whereas like genuine relationship, genuine affection and attraction, you're right, it comes in on multiple levels. Um, our bodies will know sooner than our intellect will what's a genuine good fit. We'll feel at ease around another person. We'll
Mm,
feel kind of relaxed and happy, maybe not all the time, obviously. Nothing's
mm,
perfect, but like I feel like that felt sense of the body and the sensation and the sort of involuntary actions of the body. So the flushing or the cold sweat in the palms or the butterflies in the stomach, like that, if that comes up around a person, but that can come up around the idea of a person too. So it's tricky. It's tricky, like how
yeah.
to differentiate between what's concept based, what's theory, and what's something that's genuine and alive. And I don't know. I think maybe we only learn that with trial and error.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned a lot kind of checking in with your body, kind of, and really being in tune with what your whole sort of body mind is telling you. I think that's part of it. And I think rational contemplation is part of it too. Like, learning your strengths and weaknesses, things that might trigger certain things, understanding yourself, like I don't know exactly what's happening here, but this in many ways is like something that happened previously that is kind of part of my development, part of my psychology, and not necessarily part of what what I would be if I had had the best development and not sort of been manipulated or sort of educated myself wrongly and gotten kind of narcissistic and angry or something. And
Mhm.
and I'm
Mhm.
secretly trying to, you know, get somebody back or something through this the way that I'm feeling.
Yeah, yeah. You're talking like relationships, right? Like
Yeah,
in
yeah, still
theoretically,
still
yeah.
what you're talking about and
Yeah.
how to kind of feel, how to kind of know how to navigate the relationship and your feelings and
Yeah.
what's sort of more truly natural and what's kind of in this Rousseauian kind of distinction, truly natural and sort of what is the alien streams that are kind of, he says come from people rather than real nature. So
That's interesting. Does he say anything about differentiating the two? Like how to
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I
I
don't
mean, it's a
think
hard
so.
question, so it'd be hard to pin down even if you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I can think of is that he kind of is uh, his answer is easy and complex in a way. In that it's about how you're raised, So
Mm.
he kind of gives this ideal situation that could never happen, really, where you're raising a boy away from everybody, basically, until a certain age, and then until that age, you're still really manipulating the circumstances so that he isn't getting corrupted.
Mm.
So
Mm. Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
there's
interesting.
mm. Yeah,
I
he
don't know.
talks about all sorts of ways like people can be corrupted by the ideas of others, and so. But yeah, I don't think he. So there's a book, a big book, but also kind of an introduction to all this stuff. I don't know if he goes specifically into how you as a person can kind of tell but what's the difference between nature and the alien streams. But I think he does sort of say that there is like innate feeling. He does talk about that as like a law or a principle of nature, and but yeah, I don't know if he says how to kind of get in touch with that. But
Yeah. Yeah. So like it's funny, just as you were saying, like the feeling of innate nature, this little bird flew up on my balcony outside the window here. A little black cap with like a white brown body, and it sort of chirped and then like flew off. And like I had this feeling of like there was this flash of like beauty. Like and I couldn't grab it. I couldn't think about it because it was too fast. It was there, it was chirping, it was gone, right? And as it went, it kind of had that bird shape of like the wings and the flying. And and I feel like there's a way in my life that I'm often so distracted by my thoughts or my concepts.
Hmm.
Um, Even to the point where I'm like, oh, there's a bird. It's doing cool things. I should get my phone and try and take a picture and post it. And I'm thinking all this
Yeah.
stuff, and I
Yeah.
don't take that moment to feel what my body or what my nervous system, how my nervous system responds to the sound and the movement of the bird.
Yeah.
But that sound and that movement is where the feeling for me, where the feeling of beauty comes up. It's like it's in a moment I can choose to have. I can't always choose, but like
Mm.
it's something that my attention is capable of when I remember that it's a possibility. And then in that sense, it almost feels like it feeds me in a certain way. So it's like if I notice that, then and I actually like feel the impact it has on my system, like, wow, that was really cool. I couldn't quite tell you why, but like that kind of struck me. Or like, oh, the sunset or the view of the mountain or anything that's sort of like a natural tableau of beauty is like that if we take the time to register it, can give us a sense of what we're capable of feeling that I think that we just oftentimes just forget that that's a possibility, and we go about our lives starved on that level, and then we become prey to a lot of other things,
Yeah. That
because
sounds
we're
right.
trying to replace whatever is lost in that, because some part of us remembers what we're capable of, but if we don't take the time to attend to it, we don't take the time to feed those parts of ourselves, we could go our whole lives without ever having a moment of experiencing beauty. And then we're
Yeah.
constantly looking for something to make us feel better because we're
Yeah.
we're unhappy all the time.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're looking for that false kind of beauty at ice cream or porn or whatever. I mean, the
Facebook, yeah. It's,
yeah.
just this feels good. This feels less painful than the rest of my life. But, I used to smoke cigarettes. I started in college and I quit for a few years. And then after a kind of middling level breakup, I started smoking again. I got involved in some shamanic work, which was like, oh, we'll have cigars. And I was like, I can do cigars. I quit smoking. And then that turned into tobacco, and then that turned into cigarettes and all of that. And then right around the time COVID hit, I was already feeling like, okay, I gotta quit. It's been a long time. I gotta this. I can't do this my whole life. I know this isn't healthy. I saw both my parents go through trying to quit. Like I knew it was a hard thing. And
Mm.
I got this book by this guy, Alan Carr. I think it's called The Easy Way or The Lazy Way to Quit Smoking. And it's an interesting book. And if anybody's trying to quit smoking, I highly recommend it. It was very effective for me. Um, but the reason I bring it up is he points out, so the whole time you're reading the book, he's like explaining to you sort of the process behind the addiction to smoking. But you're smoking the whole time, and then when you get to the end of the book, you quit smoking. And supposedly you have enough information to like start to understand where you're coming from. And the one that really got me was he pointed out that nicotine suppresses anxiety. So when we take a hit, when we take a hit off a cigarette, our anxiety will drop because that's what the nicotine does. But it just masks it. So then as the effect of the nicotine wears off, the anxiety comes back up. And so we're like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. I need a cigarette. But the cigarette itself is as soon as you stop smoking, you're building anxiety. Your anxiety is starting to build. And so as soon as you stop smoking, you're setting yourself up to do it again, as long as you're not realizing that, oh, this behavior
Mm.
is just perpetuating my anxiety. It's
Mm.
not it's not doing anything about it. And
Mm.
then and then you look at for me, I would look at the cigarette and be like, "Oh wow, this is just like I have this anxiety in my system, and this is the thing that's keeping me from
Mm.
coming to terms with it. And I
Mm.
can keep doing this the rest of my life until it kills me, but like, do I want to do that?" And cigarette, I just put it down. I never smoked again, because it was
Wow.
that was the particular hook that had gotten me. And I bring that up because we're talking about sort of losing track of our ability to have a felt sense of beauty or have a felt sense of awe in nature. which I love nature. I spend a lot of time in nature, but I often find myself when I'm at a beautiful scene feeling sort of like, I'm not really getting it. Like I can't,
Mm,
there's a depth here I can't quite feel into. So I have more work to do in that. But there's still this ache for a world where things are harmonious, where
mm,
things are beautiful, where things are good and true and real, and I know my place amongst them, and I
mm,
belong, and we all kind of belong, and it's never perfect because there's always that edge of growth. I don't want to come across as utopian, but you can be dystopian as well. You can say none of this is
mm,
possible. There is no harmony. There is no anything. You have to give
mm,
up any sort of hope for a better experience because life is terrible.
mm,
Um, and that doesn't work either. But to be devoid of the sense of beauty or the sense of possibility leaves us with a similar anxiety, an existential existential ache
mm,
that if we think there's no solution for this, if we think beauty doesn't exist, if we think we can't actually be good, it's impossible, we're flawed beings, if we think the truth is relative and there is no truth and my drive to find what's true is meaningless, um, which I think is because the idea of truth got corrupted, but that's a whole different conversation. Then we have this anxiety, this existential ache in us that we turn to things to numb out.
mm,
In the same way that I would turn to cigarettes to numb out my anxiety, but I'd still have to deal with my anxiety. We turn to movies, we turn to Facebook, we turn to whatever we turn to, pornography, drugs, alcohol, or even just working really hard, achieving, all of these things that they're not inherently flawed, but we're misusing them. We're using them
yeah.
as a solution to a problem that they can't solve. And
Mm,
that's the error, that's the sin, that's the mistake, that's the corruption from what you're saying about Rousseau. That's what gets us,
mm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you one word you kept using was remember. And I was thinking about, the word sati, which we translate as mindfulness. And doesn't sati, isn't the etymology of it to remember? It's this idea of recalling. And then of course, with Buddhism, isn't it something like you're trying to get back to that beginner's mind? Or Jesus talked about having faith of a child, where, yeah, there's this sort of idea like in life, we put on a lot of stuff, a lot of expectations, a lot of ideas of what we should be, what happiness is, a lot of images and everything. But
Yeah.
isn't real mindfulness kind of going, yeah, losing that and then gaining happiness, or gaining the world, gaining maybe a connection with who you are and what the world is, and that's not a separate thing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, I got a lot I could say about that. The first thing that comes to mind is a quote from the Zen teacher that I didn't know him very well, but I used to sit at the monastery that he founded. His name's Daido Roshi. He's a photographer, but he would say, like, what happens when you let go of everything, that you're talking about? So we have all these concepts, all these ideas, all these things that we're trying to do, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And we get kind of stuck in them, and so the Buddhist thing, the Zen thing, especially, is like beginner's mind, like go back. And so his thing was like, what happens when you let go of everything? What do you have left? And you have everything was the answer because it's not like it goes anywhere. You're just not hanging on to it, right? Um, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to explain that clearly. Zen usually wants you to be a little more tricky, but I don't care. I'm not officially uh, doing any Zen stuff, but yeah, hmm, what else? There's something else you said that like really stuck out for me. That the remembering the mindfulness, the return, because yeah, that's what it's so all these ideas and these concepts and these like shoulds that we have, like it's not, I think it's not so much that we should never have goals, we should never have concepts. but we get in trouble when we forget that they're imaginary. It's like kids who get upset because their imaginary friend is, I don't know, is doesn't want to play with them or something. Which as a kid, like for kids I understand, but as adults, if we're having this concept of like, I think I would probably be really happy if I got this thing. Oh, I didn't get this thing. I'm really unhappy. Like, that's a simplistic example, but these we don't have to hold on to these concepts. We create them um, as a sort of a makeshift way of understanding the world,
Yeah.
and then we mistake them as being true. We mistake them as being what's actually going on,
Yeah.
and we don't have to. We forget that thing that we forget is that we don't have to.
Yeah.
And when it comes to sati or memory or beginner's mind, it's just maybe just it's just remembering we don't have to. It's like
Yeah.
being able to play with the concepts, play with the shoulds, and then if they're not working, rather than identifying with them and being like, oh, I gotta get back, I gotta make this better, I got this be okay, well that didn't work. Like and notice where we get hooked into that as a way to kind of try and solve our problems that they're clearly not solving. Again, with similar to the just real quick to the like the checklist. Like we think the checklist of the ideal um things about our ideal partner. Oh, they make this much money, they're this tall, they look this way, their measurements are X, Y, and Z, they dress this nicely, or they don't care about how they dress. And we think all those things
Yeah.
are true, but they're just guesses. We don't know how we would feel if we met somebody who who met all of those things where and then there's this whole trial and error run of like, okay, well, can I meet this person? Can they do all these things? Okay, I met them. Am I
Yeah.
worth them their time? Are they interested in me? Okay, they are. Okay, we're together. Something's not working. Why? Like it takes so long to get to that place. And the same thing with our concepts. Whereas there is sort of just like with that bird, there is some sort of natural thing that can just strike us and can give us a sense of possibility. It can give us a sense of excitement, gives a sense of something beautiful that doesn't need to be anything else before we're ready for it. It doesn't need to check off things on a list. It just is what it is, and it strikes us in a moment. Um, I wonder if that's maybe what Rousseau is pointing to as far as sort of the natural, um, sort of the natural goodness, I guess, because it's already there. We don't have to try and, like he said something about trying to fix it with money, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think he's pointing to there is this danger that Emile or any person, yeah, starts to have this idea that they need to be rich to be happy, you know. And Rousseau talks a lot about how a proper education gets us to focus on the fundamentals and not on all the minutiae of life that people, you might say today, that trend,
Hmm.
all the BS that people get excited about for a week and a half or an hour and a half, and then it's on to the next thing, and you practically forgot about. Remember what the thing was like last week? It was something different, but I mean, we were so into it, but I don't really know what it was. But anyway, this thing now is so exciting.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is the
yeah,
thing
yeah.
that will really like change humanity or be is just it feels so important.
Yeah, yeah, and then it doesn't, and to catch that is a trick, right? To be able to, I mean that I think is a fairly good explanation of where mindfulness or sati is applicable, is because you're like, if you're paying attention, if your memory is in the present moment and you're actively like experiencing the present moment fully, then you're much better equipped to notice when those things change. And then you're like, wait, this doesn't mean as much as I think it did. These trends that I'm following, like they change every day. And if I'm enjoying that, okay. But if I'm not, or if like they can't be that important, what's more important? What's something that lasts longer? You know? So you can kind of tune into it that way, but I don't know that our world is necessarily set up to cultivate those kinds of virtues. I think that's a
No.
virtue. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, not at all. I mean, we're into engagement, right? That's what social media companies are doing. They're trying to keep the eyeballs there, keep the mind there, keep the attention.
Hmm.
And then,
Hmm.
of course, they know we need endless variety, but only the kind that sort of that we like personally. And
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm. Which is interesting. But then you have stuff like this, like or podcasts in general, where it's like these long form conversations, and you got to keep your attention, and people like that too. Um,
yeah,
so people are capable of that, but it's not being reinforced with a lot of the programming.
yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
what's going on?
Mm. And yeah, I was just thinking, yeah, you were mentioning all the things that people distract themselves with or think they're becoming happy, that they're going to get happy from, uh, focus on health or et cetera, over focus on health or et cetera.
Mhm.
And yeah, all those things are not bad in themselves, and technology is not bad in itself either. It's just, you and I are just having a conversation that is facilitated by technology. The technology isn't running the show. Um, it's just that we're using technology, and a car or whatever is not inherently bad. It's something that facilitates something, but you don't want to use it too much or use it in the
Yeah,
wrong way or have it take over your life to where you're only focused on the car. It's using up 80% of your income or something like that.
yeah. Fancy detailing and fancy auto parts and all that stuff. Yeah, because I mean, look at what you're doing there. You're outside of like you're overly focused on one thing in a way that precludes everything else that needs attention. So it's not the car that's the problem in this particular example. It's the lack of attention on everything else that's causing the problems.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really do get a lot of appreciation of in nature is like if you look really closely, everything's paying attention to everything else. Everything is
Yeah.
in connection, in communication, in harmony. Like what we know about tree roots and the way the mycorrhizal network, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the sort of fungal network that connects the roots and transfers nutrients and the trees can speak to each other through that, and the birds build their nests with the twigs and they eat the fruit that the tree provides, and the tree grows from the ground, and like it's just everything is connected to everything else. If you just and it's that's so often said in like a I had this mystical realization that we're all one, right? But if you just look at the specifics of what's happening long enough, it's obvious. You just have to take the time to pay attention to it. And you have to realize that that beauty is there to feed you, to tell you the story of how the world works and why you're unhappy because you're behaving in a way where the world doesn't work, in a way that the world doesn't work. You're overly focused on the car. You're overly focused on yourself, on your own experience,
Yeah.
which is not bad, just like the car isn't bad. But if you're focused on that and you're not also equally focused on everything else and how you fit and and the way everything else is feeding you in a way that you can be grateful for, in a way that you can like and not like you should be grateful in a moralistic way, but
Yeah.
like gratitude arises.
Yeah.
Gratitude arises naturally in the presence of beauty, in the presence of goodness. Awe arises in the presence of truth. Of oh wow, this is just true. I can't even explain it, but like and not like factual, but just like it feels true. That felt sense that you were pointing to with in Rousseau earlier. Um, we have to remember that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are so many distractions, and there are also, yeah, a lot of social incentives to do other things, that can raise your status. You can, especially if you're intelligent and you have verbal ability, you can use it politically. I don't mean officially, but of course, officially, obviously. But yeah, you can shift people's minds and attention to off of maybe what's best and natural towards something that you're a goal that you have, that
Mm. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were
No,
gonna
no,
keep
you're
going.
not.
Um, yeah, because it's like that, and if you're doing that, then you're not directly experiencing the reality that's resulting for this other person because of your behavior. And I think we all do that to a certain degree. Um, Anytime we get in a fight with someone that we care about, anytime, we get angry at somebody that we care about, like there's a moment of ignorance or a moment of blindness there, but to do so willingly for your own benefit, if you know that's what you're doing, I feel like that's pretty fucked up. That's where a lot of the corrupting influences come from, sort of this lack of lack of the realization that it benefits you if other people are happy. If other people are living a good life, it's beneficial for you in the very least. I mean, I don't want to paint this as like, well, you just have to give everything up and be a martyr and take on all the cares of the world and never care about yourself. That's a false equivalency, I think. But if you don't care about yourself, you're in trouble. And if you don't care about other people, you're in trouble. But when you manage to take all of that into account, the way that nature naturally does, with trees that grow and then maybe they fall over, but then another tree grows on top of them, and the apple tree outside of my window grows a lot of apples, and the apples fall on the ground and they sit there because nobody really cleans them up. And then the deer come in the winter and they have some sugar, they have some calories that they can come and eat, maybe even get drunk off if the apples have been there long enough and like have a
Mm.
good experience. But that just happens. Like nobody plans that. Nobody like forces that into existence. And I think we can remember we can remember that ourself if we're paying attention to other people and our place and how we relate and how they're thriving and how we're thriving and like actually bothering to care whether everybody's doing well. We need a lot more of that, I think, in the world these days. And we're all kept so isolated. We forget that when other people do well, we do well too, if we're doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah, that is hard. I mean, so maybe a lot of it's, communicating through electronic devices and you're only getting words and images. Maybe there's something about being there in person. And also, you went outside your house, you got fresh air at least a little bit to where you're a little more natural, a little more relaxed, and your body's functioning a little more as it should. And then maybe you're a little more compassionate and empathetic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would sort of be the natural conclusion from Rousseau's theory. If we are sort of if nature is sort of inherently good and we are inherently good through nature, then when we connect back into nature, it can kind of refresh our own sense of that. But if we don't bother, then we can very easily get confused.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are, and people would yeah, there are people that are willing to confuse us to get our minds get our minds on other things.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, I can see there being a critique against the way Rousseau has worded it that he would have Emile focus on beauty of like, oh, you just want him being sort of, oh, we don't even have stories for it in our culture anymore, I guess, but just being sort of like very, very like elitist, like, oh, I only listen to the best music and I only have the best art around me. And if I'm not in a highly refined atmosphere, I can't take it. Oh, it's too much for me. And clearly he's not saying that, but I could see that being that critique leveled against him. And I wonder how we can, you know, how we might differentiate between what he's saying and what the critique might, sort of straw man him out to be saying.
Hmm. I mean, I guess in the book, the education in general is with nature. So a lot of the beauty that he's exposed to is very simple. It's not refined. It's
Mm,
literally drawing his environment, drawing people. So yeah, so it's a lot of that is not refined. Um, yeah, yeah. I guess that that's probably enough. I mean, he's not. Yeah, he's not very elitist or anything. When he talks about music, he's not teaching him to play really complex things. It's more like he just says it should be natural, it should be play, it should be um it's a physical thing. He talks about preferring certain instruments over others because of how dexterous it makes the fingers or something like that, and it doesn't make them too tough or something. Yeah, it's just very basic, like the way he talks about it. And it should always be play, and the reason for it to be play is part of his bigger theme of it's always he never goes against the child's natural inclinations. Now, of course, in the wrong environment with the wrong influences, or maybe with the wrong mind, I don't know, you could critique it that way. But Emile's influences may, Emile's inclinations might go towards the bad. But according to Rousseau, with his theory, and maybe it's idealistic, his inclinations with the right education will never go wrong.
mm, mm. That's interesting. Yeah, because that does feel a little idealistic,
Mm,
um, but also like I think I would agree with that as a like if you're talking about it in as a in a pragmatic way, like in a useful way. So like if you are educating a kid or if you're looking at your own education, if you notice places where something's not working, and then if you use this description, this philosophy as a tool, as far as like, okay, well, what was corrupted here? In what way did I go against what seemed natural or what seemed, sort of more harmonious? You can kind of you can probably can kind of start to clear that corruption away and sort of return to something if you have that perspective to approach it with. So
mm.
um, that makes a lot more sense to me than it being like you only get to be harmonic if you have if your guardians when you were growing up or your parents or whoever managed to keep everything perfectly away from you so you could just be yourself like that that feels one, I don't think that's what he's saying. I'm making that, I'm using that as a rhetorical device.
Mm.
But that also just doesn't seem possible. Like that's setting yourself up for failure because you can't. Everybody's going to make mistakes, and I'm sure there's room for that in there. But as a philosophy, like it's more useful pragmatically than it is as an ideal.
Yeah. And yeah, he's not getting a meal to be perfect. It's just to be natural. And then, yeah, mm, there's ideas of yeah, just harmony in his with his environment. Sorry, I shouldn't use the word environment. I've heard that that's kind of this modern word that we use that sort of separates us from nature, whereas we used to use the word nature more, which includes ourselves.
Hmm,
But
hmm,
anyway, yeah, it's Emile is supposed to be in harmony with himself. He has up to a certain age, he has never gone against his inclinations, kind of.
hmm, hmm.
But of course, Rousseau has set him up to not ever be corrupted and all that stuff. And
That's
of course he
interesting.
uses it to commentary on how people and kids get corrupted by all sorts of influences.
Yeah. Yeah, because there you have it being pragmatic again, of like you're using it as a means of describing um the forms of corruption, and then you can say, okay, well, which, do these apply to me? Do any of these ring any bells? Is this familiar? Which is great. But I mean, I've been around some young kids in my time, and there are definitely times where it is in the child's best interest that they do not give in to their natural inclination
Oh
to,
yeah, yeah, of course, yeah.
take that out of your mouth, kiddo. That's not something we eat, kind of a thing. And I'm sure he's not talking about that. But again, like ways of ways of honing in on what he is saying by pointing out how ridiculous it would be if he was focusing on it that low res with that lowest of resolution. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think there have been many times throughout history where people have tried to apply Emile directly. And I think, like pretty much all philosophy, you get into big trouble when you do that because the philosophers need a concrete way. It's like a novel, you know. Um, you wouldn't want to apply this story directly to life. This is a structure and characters and commentary that you're supposed to absorb. And then whatever comes out in life should be coming out through the wisdom that you cultivated partially by absorbing this philosophy and hopefully other things, your own life. And then, yeah, you're like a translator, right? Except the analogy isn't perfect because it's not just from one language to another language of the same type, but it's more like you translate from one type of thing into a different type of thing, which is your life, including
Mm,
your words and everything. And I think this is maybe in general the spiritual problem where you learn something through philosophy, religion, literature, folk tales, and then there it goes through your own genius and it comes out in your life to a greater or lesser degree with a certain grace, uh, effectiveness, etc. You know, and yeah, I think it's foolhardy to try to directly apply it. Yeah, you have to translate it. You have to feel it. You know your wisdom and everything.
yeah. Yeah, I see. Yeah, that's a really nice distinction you make because it's like philosophy becomes a a means of transmitting insights about human nature
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that then you can absorb them and see how they might apply to your life rather than it being factual and repeatable and formulaic.
yeah.
I think you're totally right. You completely missed the mark if you try to apply philosophy as a formula because it's a different layer of reality that it's interacting with. It's not, physical.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not laws. And we even know when you set up religious or human laws, they have to be interpreted wisely. And we know of many cases where they're interpreted overly dogmatically, and we know of places where they're interpreted better, where maybe the judge knows when to throw the book at someone and when to really be lenient on someone. You know,
Yeah.
you can criticize it, but in life you have to feel it, you know? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. It's hard because we in the West have been so rewarded for our boiling things down into black and white objectivity. And I mean rewarded in like our society has thrived. We seem to be doing well in regards to the quality of our lives.
but don't you think that's part of the myth of our times, though? Even science and technology themselves are not that black and white, you know?
I completely agree. I completely agree. I think that the black and whitening of it as if that was really how reality works is where we lose all that stuff we were talking about, or that moment of the flash of the bird, the felt sense of the beauty of nature. Like all of that lives in the gray, or it lives in the space between the black and the white. It lives in a space that, I mean, is is both objective and subjective,
Yeah.
you know? Because I think we're like, we're sort of critiquing postmodernism, or we've mentioned it a little bit, and I think there's this idea in postmodernism, as I understand it, of like there are no ultimate truths and truth doesn't matter, and it's all just everything is relative. And I can see that being a healthy response to everything
Yeah.
being so black and white that you need to kind of break it apart. But
Yeah.
I don't think it's healthy on its own because it leaves you with no means of orienting.
Yeah.
It still it leave the problem is it leaves the concept of truth still in the quote unquote objective, still in the black and white.
Hmm.
So it's like
Yeah.
truth has to be black and white, and
Yeah.
therefore, and black and white is impossible in
Yeah.
reality. So therefore, there can be no truth in reality. And
Yeah.
I think we miss the fact that like there's if reality isn't black and white, if reality is a bunch of different colors, and we're like inhabiting, fuck man, we're inhabiting all of them, like the truth of the situation can arise. Like there is truth. The direction of truth can arise. We can move towards it. We can develop it. We can cultivate it. We can find what's true for us, not in a like, well, and therefore what's true for me, but then what's true for you, and then we
Yeah.
get into this like war. It's like, no, there is not a hierarchy like one is better than the other per se, but there is a refinement process that can happen.
Yeah.
And we come to that, I think, through our subjective experience rather than through the denial of the refinement itself. The refinement of the subjective experience itself is sort of how we can approach truth, as opposed to what, a lot of the scientism says, the black and whiteness, the modernity, the enlightenment or whatever, is that we have to get rid of the subjective in order to find the truth. I think that's backwards. And then the postmodernism leaves the truth in this quote unquote black and white objective, um, and then says it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And both of those abandon the fact that like truth only matters from the moment it is felt, from the subjective experience that recognizes it as true, and meaningful in a way that isn't just subjective, but is subjective grown to the place where it can include other beings and others. So again, we're not focused on the
Yeah.
car. We're focused on how everything relates within our lives. And then
Yeah.
truth can arise out of that. It's a higher order of things.
Yeah. And as you have that kind of harmony in your life, you can kind of feel it more, make better decisions what to do next, and know when there's kind of dangerous temptations that are coming up, and not kind of be fooled into to going with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the more that we sort of attune to that felt sense, the more that we're actually present to our lives and experience them, um, the easier it becomes to recognize problematic behaviors or addictive behaviors or things like that, and not so much struggle against them as if you like with this with the thing I was talking about with smoking. Once I saw it clearly, it was very easy to put down. But before I saw it clearly, I had to struggle with this misunderstanding of like, oh, but I'm anxious and I really want a cigarette. I really want a cigarette. I'd feel so much better. And all my focus and attention is on how bad I feel and how bad I feel. And it's like that's cranking up
Yeah.
the anxiety and that's cranking up the anxiety. And maybe I should stop focusing on it. Nah. But once I understood the truth of the anxiety nicotine cycle, I was like, oh, I don't want to engage in that anymore. I clearly see that's not going to drive happiness. That's not going to develop happiness for me.
Yeah.
It's a failed experiment to derive happiness from nicotine. Cool, I don't need to do that anymore. Like, yeah, it's going to suck, but like, I'm no longer saying, well, I can get happiness here, but I'm not supposed to because it's not healthy. And so it's not healthy, so I have to fight my anxiety, but I really want to fix it. And I'm still believing that I can fix it. And so the same thing with modernism and postmodernism, they've got this idea that like, oh, truth exists only in the subjective way where we don't get to have anything subjective come into the picture and everything subjective
Yeah.
is false. And if that's the case, then we have to pursue truth. Well, we can't pursue truth because it never works out that way, because that's not how reality works. But then if we leave truth in that black and white realm, we're left without any truth because we can't access that black and white realm because reality isn't black and white.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's the same. It's like uh, it's an addiction to objectivity in a like mathematical kind of a sense. It's turning to that again and again to solve the feeling that we don't belong. Like if we just get it right, then we'll get to belong. If we just have the right concept or the right formula, if we just crack it, then we'll belong.
Mhm.
But all of that is based on the premise that our subjective experience cannot ever approach truth, cannot ever appreciate truth, that we have to get rid of our subjective experience to have the truth that will one day be the thing that saves us, that helps us find the belonging. But the reason we want belonging is because we've abandoned ourself, we've abandoned our subjective experience. And so if we can bring that back and begin to appreciate it, appreciate that felt sense, appreciate how in nature everything supports everything else, then the clinging after that objective black and white reality as a means of providing happiness will fall away because we'll be like, oh, that's never going to work. The happiness I was looking for was never in there. It's somewhere else. And I can use math, I can use science, I can use objectivity to do mathy, sciencey, objective things, but I can't use it to find the meaning of my life. And there is a meaning to my life that I can find. There is a truth about my being and my soul in this world that is possible to refine in a way that isn't just completely at odds with what everybody else believes. I can develop my truth, my awareness, my objectivity, my particular element of shine to a degree that I can shine it on other people and see them the way they are and
Mhm.
meet them in that way. I don't have to abandon myself to get to that place where I'm seeing things truly. But it takes work, and if people don't want to do the work, then they're going to fall back on the black and white thing because that's worked for so long. As I said, with our quality of life, sort of with our current society. But the meaning crisis, all the problems in society are all of these subjective things that are never resolved through the objective means are starting to get louder and louder and louder. They want our attention. They need us
Mhm.
to pay attention to what they need so that
Mhm.
that can be refined over time to meet with the objective and they can inform each other. And I think when they come together, that's beauty. That's good. Maybe that's truth even. I'm not sure, but you have to have both of them or it's never going to be satisfying.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have to have what we think of as the subjective and the objective. You need deep connection to your own experience and something that connects you to the rest of the world and to other people. And that when you only have one or the other, you're alienated. You're not
Mhm.
really connected to what the gestalt or whatever you want to say, the you and the world.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm very curious about um, in my own sort of philosophical ponderings is like, was there something going on in Western culture that, how do I say, that inclined us to go towards this sort of objective scientific worldview that we're critiquing. And again, those are not bad things, but alone they're bad things. But we kind of glommed onto that as like the only means of making sense of the world or deriving value from the world. Um, and I wonder if like was it a question? So say let's here this is an easier way to explain it. So say there's the objective sense of the world and there's a subjective sense of the world. And ideally, we're sort of good at both. Like we're practiced, we're exercised at both. Both of those muscles are strong. So something caused Western society to overly focus on the objective and the scientific and sort of abandon the subjective and the personal and the meaningful.
Hmm.
Was it that we got really good at this and just overdeveloped, those muscles and the other ones got weak? Or was there something about what it would take to develop the subjective that scared us? And so we ran from that problem. We're like, we don't want to deal with that. We're just going to come over here and deal with this, the subjective thing, and that'll solve all the problems that we don't want to deal with over here. And I feel like that's something that maybe Ian McGilchrist gets into with his left brain, right brain thing, and that the left brain being very sort of this analytical kind of a thing, and the right brain being more the subjective, inclusive of the subjective and sort of the more meaningful element, that he talks a lot about sort of the abandonment of the right for the left. But
Mm.
I don't know if the question I have is like, did we abandon the right for the left, or did we abandon the right because it was something was scary and we turned to the left? And I don't know if I'm mirrored on the screen, so I might be totally backwards with my directions, but I'm doing it
Okay.
right in real life. Talk about subjective and objective. Or did we turn to the left and get really good at that and then think we can just sort of not have to deal with the right, with the subjective? And I don't think there's necessarily an answer to that because we'd have to really deeply analyze social patterns going back. Because like again, I'm talking a lot, I'm sorry. The perspective that I'm looking at this from is like, so in, you know, 2000 BC, there was a culture in Europe that was in touch with the land, that was in touch with history, that was in touch with the traditions that had, the ancestral traditions, the indigenous European traditions that had carried through. And then, Rome came through and conquered a lot of this indigenous Europe stuff and sort of got them all under the Roman Empire. But even still, then they had their own elements and there were some things, and it wasn't maybe that bad. And then Christianity comes through and says, no, no, you don't even get to have your own beliefs, your own. We all have to have the same structure, you know. We all have to have the same religion. We all have to believe the same things. We all have to like we can't be tied to the land anymore. We can't be tied to nature. We can't be tied to the indigenous ways of being in this place that have developed over centuries. We have to wipe all that away and we have to supplant it with this new religion, this new that we all have to believe. And and so you go from like, oh, we all just have to be under this one rule to, oh, we all have to be under this one God to like, oh, we all have to be under this one truth. And each one of those is like a step away from something that is distinct and local and meaningful and subjective in the moment in this place. It's a way of relating myself to the nature that is around me and to the culture that has grown up amongst this nature in a way that understands the nature and how to interact with the trees and the spirits, if you want to believe that, or just the when did the salmon come back? How do we maintain them? How do we have this
Hmm.
healthy reciprocal relationship? As soon as we remove that in favor of a more efficient structure that we all have to get under, we start losing things and we start stepping away from that subjective meaningfulness towards an objective black and whiteness that like there's grief there. And I just wonder if so much of what's underlying Western culture isn't just the grief of what we lost and then lost and then lost and then lost for so long. Um, and we're all just trying to avoid grief by running towards science and technology as hard as we can because that grief is pretty old. If so, that's perspective I'm wondering about. But like, how would you even check that? How would you know? What would you do about it if it was true? I have no idea. But it makes me sad to think of like what was lost. How much beauty did we forget to appreciate? You know, um, how much of our connection to nature did we abandon, and can we return to it? Um, because ultimately, those voices that are calling to us from that side of things, like we can't ignore them. I mean, global warming, climate change, climate chaos, all the things that are happening, like if things continue to trend in the direction that we are being warned that they will, nature's going to win. The subjective's going to win, and it's going to wash over all of our structures that we've built and all of our objectivity. And it's going to say, no, I'm here. You can't ignore me anymore. And if you're not going to listen to me, then I'm gonna, like a good parent, I'm going to take your toys away and you're going to sit and think about what you did. Only it's going to really suck if that means, civilization goes away. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that we can work through our grief and find a way to return to our roots in the land and respect the beauty that's all around us. I mean, Rousseau seems to be pointing towards that as a sort of a fundamental structure in human nature.
Mm.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. In terms of yeah, getting back to the land, I mean, yeah, God, I don't know. And most of us live in cities, but I mean, I think you can't be in touch like a native person is to nature, where they have an education for 20 years of all the medicinal plants, all the poisons, every single little hillock, every, bend in the stream or, whatever. They probably have a lot of knowledge of the particular trees and everything that are around there. And and of course like I think you started talking about the myths and the spirits that are said to inhabit this particular place. This person died here that we knew in this way, and just the richness of that connection to that land. And
Mm,
but I think we can start to reconnect to yeah where you are, where there's something, it I think there's nothing wrong with still connecting to the, let's say, even you, sort of a thought experiment. Let's say you live in a pretty urban area where there's only park and some trees in the street, but there's buildings and, there's lots of people, but there's still history there. There's still spirit there. Somebody lived here, somebody died there. You have personal stories and things. Although, yeah, there's maybe a little bit more social kind of aspect there, but there's still a connection, done in the right way. There's still a connection to the place around you and the people, and there's a spirit that grows up out of that that I think can be a natural kind of thing. But I don't know, what do you think of that? Yeah, just uh, we probably can't, yeah, connect back like our ancestors did, more native ancestors or ancient
mm,
ancestors, but
That's
we
such a good.
can.
Mm.
Mm.
Sorry.
No,
Did you want to finish asking? Was there more, or are you sort
no,
of
I was just kind of repeating kind of what I was
okay?
saying in like different
Okay.
words.
That's such an interesting thing because at first I was thinking well, yeah, like if you're living in a city, like you can watch a dandelion grow in the cracks. Like if you're really paying attention to it, a dandelion's a beautiful thing. Yellow, like it first it's green and then it's yellow. You watch the flower come up, it goes yellow. You watch it fade, turn white. Like that whole process is fascinating, and you're not apart from that in the city. But it's so the picture you were painting though of like, well, we're not going to go from, living in big urban center toward to being this sort of idealistic, noble indigenous person who is completely in touch with nature and knows every bend of the river and all that stuff. Um, and I just had this hit of like how much I, and I'm sure many other people, look at these things and say, like, oh, well, here's an idea that I have about what would be a good way to live, and I just have to
Mm.
go and do it and make it happen.
Yeah,
And like, oh, it's not exactly push of the button, but it's sort of a relatively immediate gratification. But if you look at the situation honestly, those kinds of things, that kind of relationship with nature develops over centuries, over millennia.
yeah.
And if we don't have that, we're not going to have that for centuries or millennia, even if we intentionally start cultivating and pursuing it. And to cultivate and pursue it is the difficulty of um, putting aside an addiction that we know is bad for us. It's trying to return to this thing that will take a long time to build to the level that we know is possible, but we
Mhm.
can't just create overnight. And I
Yeah.
think I think I feel grief in that. I feel terror, in fact, of like, I mean, I'm not, obviously I'm not overwhelmed, right? I'm not like, oh my God, it's terrible. But I can sense in there the vastness of time and effort that separates us from this thing that sounds pretty nice and the place that we are right now. And the degree to which we are cultivated by our technology for instant gratification, like we're not inclining ourselves towards the kind of work that needs to happen. And we're still chasing this instant gratification of like, oh, if we just get the numbers right, we'll be happy. But what's going to make us happy is knowing our place as a species in the world and inhabiting it in such a way that we in the world are made better by it. And we're
Yeah.
not doing that. Christ, no, I think that's pretty clear. Like, I don't care what you think about modern culture. Like, we are not taking care of things in a way that is ensuring their flourishing. I mean, even in the Bible, it says, Adam and Eve are set as stewards. They're meant to be caring for Eden or the world or whatever. We're not caring for it. We're making ourselves comfortable. Well, it seems to get worse and worse, you know. Our bubble's getting smaller and smaller. Hmm,
But you
man.
don't think, I mean, are you saying that the ideal is to literally return to like tribal society and things or something? Or some
Well,
kind of small village existence or something?
that is interesting because, like, obviously, I am kind of saying that. Like, I understand, meaning I understand why you're asking that because that is the direction that I'm sort of pointing to. But it's
Mm,
also like I would agree that that's not ideal. We
mm,
don't want to, nor are we going to be able to just return to
mm,
a simple thing in that way. But I think there's there's a thing that there's a value system maybe or a story that we tell ourselves about what it means to be a human being that people who live in a village, people who, do that this sort of idealized way that we're talking about, there's a story that they tell themselves about what it means to be human that we do not tell ourselves.
mm,
And there's a story that we tell ourselves about what it means to be human, that we're capable, that we
mm,
can manufacture homes, we can have air conditioning units that keep us cool when it's hot, we can have a refrigerator that keeps our food fresh, we can have pasteurized milk that isn't going to get us sick. We can have all these medications that vaccines that eradicate smallpox and measles and polio, and have healthier children and a healthier thing. And
mhm.
like neither of those stories are bad, and we shouldn't set them up against each other. But neither of those stories are complete,
Mm,
and we should
yeah.
be striving for one that manages to tell them both tell one story that tells us both these things about being human. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I focus overly in my the thing I'm saying right now, I focus overly on this village thing because that's what I feel is missing.
Mm,
But it is a danger, right? So like say you want to go from here to here and you start doing this. If this is a group of people, they're trying to go from A to B, and they start veering this way, and I'm in that group, and I notice the problem, I'm going to be like, hey, you need to turn right, you need to turn right, you need to turn right. But if I forget that this is where I'm aiming, and I think right is where I'm aiming, eventually I'm going
mm,
to do that, and I'm
yeah.
just going to go right, and I'm going to miss a thing. So like you definitely don't want to overcorrect, and you have to kind of keep in mind what the ultimate goal is, which is dangerously approaching objectivity in the black and white sense, but isn't because it doesn't denigrate the subjective, I think, if you do it well.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like and I think Rousseau in general, his project is he's seeing the in early modernity the I don't various problems that are kind of coming up with the Enlightenment. I think he's known as a counter-Enlightenment thinker.
Mhm.
Not that he is naively unaware of the benefits of the Enlightenment, like against disease or I don't know what.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think he's seeing the effect on human beings, the psychology, spirituality, and kind of in Emile, he's trying to point in a detailed way to possibly how we can live in this world as natural as possible and happy, but still in the modern world with our technology and with our scientific um, ideas and ways of thinking, which I think he sees as the biggest threat, which I think you're kind of talking about too, with this objectivity to where eventually, we're alienated. I think that's a lot of his concern is that alienation. And I think we have this kind of idea. It'd be interesting to almost explore it as a myth that you're either natural and happy and ignorant. You don't know about the world. You're a stupid person, or you're objective, computer like, Spock like, unemotional. You know all about the world, but you're a madman, or you don't connect to anybody, and you're not connected to yourself. You're barely your heart, you're not connected to your body. You have no relationships with other human beings. You can't talk to people very well. You're a computer, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you were saying alienation. The first thing I thought was like alienation from ourselves, from who we
Yeah.
actually are.
Yeah.
And then therefore, because the part of ourself that we're alienated from is the part of ourself that's in touch with nature. So we're alienated from both ourselves and nature as sort of a combined entity.
Yeah.
But I think I think the danger. So like one, you spell out the sort of precipice we're on very well of sort of this one thing or the other. Um, and I think the danger there is to think that therefore I have to think my way or Spock my way back into naturalness.
Yeah.
Um, and we end up, it falls around behind us and we just sort of are chasing it, but it's still so anyway, I'm just seeing this image of like
Yeah.
doing that. But the thing is like you can't be alienated from yourself. You can just think that you're alienated from yourself.
Mm.
And there's this
Yeah, that's right.
there's this there's this this book, Ender's Game,
Hmm.
which Mrs. Lyon had me read us read. I don't remember if it was all of us or it was just me. I
I
remember
didn't
reading
read it.
it.
I know what you're talking about. I mean to read it. Do you recommend it, by the way?
I do. It's got some really good ideas. It's a fun science fiction story. I tried to read the sequels and they didn't quite catch for me. I
Mm.
was reading a lot. This was back in like high school and college.
Mm.
But the reason I bring it up is there's a scene in there where Ender's leading, so he's this young prodigy, and he's leading this group. They're doing military training exercises in the zero G kind of environment,
Mm.
and he's leading his team in from one sort of entry port into this sort of global space, this spherical space that has like different obstacles set up every day differently. And the whole goal is to, I forget exactly, but the whole goal is to get you all the way across to the other team's base,
Hmm.
the sort of and the thing that they enter into,
Mm.
um, or to like it's like a capture the flag kind of a thing, right?
Mm.
So the thing that has stuck with me from all these years is the strategy he comes up with is that the enemy's base is down because they're zero G, so there's you can orient any way you want to. Um, but because he orients them down, they come at the enemy base kind of flat, so their feet are facing, and so they're harder to hit, and also, I think if you get, because they're doing like a laser tag thing. So if you get hit, you're frozen. But if they hit your legs are frozen, but the rest of you can still move. They have to actually get like a kill shot in the chest or the head to actually freeze you, and then you can't move and you're considered, dead for the sake of the game.
Hmm.
But I always think of that as like the enemy base is down. Like the goal is down. The goal is below us. The goal is something that we surrender into, that gravity pulls us into. Our self that we are alienated from is already present. We're not alienated from it, but something has separated us, or we have something has made us feel separated. And so rather than trying to find the thing that we're missing, the thing that we're missing is down. The thing that we're missing is back within us, and we can. It's not so much that you're gonna like look and find it there as it is that like similarly to the cigarettes, you're gonna stop doing the thing that you know doesn't work,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna have to figure out what the thing is that does work, and that it doesn't answer. But if you're looking in the right place, maybe you'll actually find it. If you're looking in the wrong place, there's a story I've heard of this guy was uh this- so this guy he's walking home at night and he sees his friend who's got kind of a reputation for being a little kooky. He sees his friend um under a streetlight looking around under this bush in the streetlight, and he's like, "Oh, hey buddy, what are you doing? What's going on? How come you're digging in the bushes this late?" And his friend says like, "Oh, well, you see, I lost my keys. I lost my house keys. And I don't know, I can't get in my house without my keys." And so he's like, "Okay, well, let me help you." And he's looking through the bushes, he's looking through the grass around, he's like digging around everywhere, and he's like, "Man, I don't see your keys anywhere. Like, are you sure you dropped them around here?" And the guy says, "Well, no, I dropped them over by my door, but it's dark there and I can't see anything. So
Yeah.
I'm looking where I can see stuff."
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that before.
It's a good story. And I think it
Yeah.
applies here in that, like, we are looking for personal meaning and subjective satisfaction in an objective manner. We are looking for something outside of ourselves that we can take and stick inside of us to make us feel better when the reason we don't feel good is because we aren't paying attention to something that's already inside of us. But it's dark there and it's scary and we don't know what the fuck it is and we don't know how to deal with it. So we just keep doing the thing that we think is going to work.
Yeah.
Mm.
I was thinking of that story that you said is, I mean, if you could increase the street lamps view, I mean, because to find something, we do have to be able to see it, right? So we
I
have
mean,
to,
metaphorically, yes.
mm,
Physically, no. I can feel around in the dark. I can find keys if they've fallen behind my steps. I can,
yeah, yeah,
But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
yeah. But yeah, I was just yeah, if you want to be able to see it, yeah, there has to be light there, and I was thinking of increasing the street lamps view or waiting until the sun comes up or whatever you want to say.
Mhm.
It seems like if you want to find something, if you increase the light, if you increase your vision, and this is sort of Platonic, then you can, or other philosophies, you can kind of you might be able to find it. And I would say, in terms of worldviews, yeah, if you want to find meaning, I think rationality and the things and yeah, this is still Platonic. The things you use to learn about the world and other people can help you to learn about yourself. But yeah, you kind of have to bring your whole self into it, and this is not just a mathematical kind of looking. Although I know Plato was he wanted to reduce everything to math in some ways too. So, but
Plato's out of my depth, but I will take your word for it.
but yeah,
Um,
but he did seem to have a lot to do with the spirit and with learning to increase your vision to reduce your self deception to understand to have a deeper connection to yourself and reality.
yeah, yeah. I think that's good, and I see it working metaphorically in the story I was telling about like the keys and the street lamp and stuff of like. the thing to keep in mind is like our attention is light. It's a little bit of light, but it builds. So if we hold our attention on something that is dark with enough care and enough openness, enough beginner's mind, enough like not assuming we already know what it is and we can put this other thing in its
Yeah,
place.
yeah,
If we can just keep our attention on it, the light will grow, and that's sort of the how we refine reality, and that moves us towards because it's our own personal attention, it's subjective, but because we are paying attention to this particular bit of reality, that particular bit of reality becomes more true.
yeah,
It becomes more what it ultimately actually is, and we can put that
yeah,
attention on ourself, which is sort of meditation, sort of mindful. What is this process that is, I usually call me, that's kind of dark and mysterious? I can start to uncover and discover what's going on here through
yeah,
the use of my attention. But instead, I think what we often do is we look for something that is already bright, that we already understand,
yeah,
and that we think
exactly.
is a close enough match to this thing I don't understand. And then we just put that on top and we interact with the thing as if it were
Yeah,
the reality with this concept of the thing we think we already understand. And we're not actually putting our light on reality. But as soon as we do put our light on reality, we're developing our natural naturalness, like Rousseau is saying, that sort of puts us back in touch with that, I think.
yeah, yeah. I think so much of how attention is almost maybe the most important thing in life, and maybe in a way one of the few things we really have. Um, and this relates to our a lot of what we've talked about in this conversation, where people try to deceive others by diverting their attention to something, or when you were talking about learning, I think it was a kind of reframing, right, that reading that book gave you, to where you saw the cigarette as being relief from anxiety and focusing on the anxiety, of course, rather
Mm-hmm.
than thing causing the anxiety loop. It's
Mm-hmm.
like something, you know? And
Yeah.
yeah, I just think if you can, if you can keep in mind attention, the importance of attention, and to refine that, and to know what you're paying attention to, and to sit to that that picture that you painted of, if you put your attention patiently, kindly, maybe with compassion, and to really try to see what something is, rather than seeing what you want to see, then that I would think that leads to a much better life,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
connection
good.
with reality.
Yeah, I think that's how we grow that sort of idealized story of what it means to be human, of like not the technological Spock and not the innocent but ignorant savage villager or whatever you want to, whatever stereotypes you want to spray paint on that. Um, that those are both half truths. They're both partial realities, and the only way we come to an experience of something more holistic is through attention. And one of the things I liked about what you said is it points to like putting our attention on our attention, being aware, being attentive to how we're using our attention. Because you can just be like, oh, I'm super attending to this, I don't know, this video game or this thing
Yeah,
on my phone, and my attention is locked in, but I'm not noticing my attention. I'm not noticing. I'm not taking the time to be like, okay, I'm on Facebook. How much time has passed? What am I paying attention to? What's like, there's nothing outside of that that's informing that. And I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing with my attention. I'm just sort of mindlessly doing it. So you could almost say, even though I'm attending to it, there's no attention there. There's no genuine
yeah,
intent. There's no intention there. Um, although there is, because you're intending like, oh, I want to get these likes. So it's complicated to put into words, but I think what you said about like attending to attention is probably the best way to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I wondered what you think about one kind of thing that Rousseau is concerned about, of how to be a natural person in the modern world, in the complex modern world, with not just big cities, but with scientific concepts, with these abstractions. And now we have nuclear weapons, we have AI, we have all sorts of stuff going on, developing wars, um, maybe aliens. We have all sorts of conspiracy theories, some of which may or may not be true. How do you think we have a mind to be happy and to be in connection with reality and to have compassion and connection with others in this complex ass world?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't have an answer is the first thing I think I should say. I don't have a solution. But I think there is an element of, one, the first important thing is like what we were talking about earlier, as far as, if we are holding up this sort of idealized village style of relating to nature and finding our place in nature and how far we are from that, like to recognize that we're not going to solve this question of how to be more natural in our current civilization and all of its ups and downs. We're not going to solve it by doing a new thing. We're going to solve it by a really slow return to an old thing, and more so like as it speaks inside of us. Like we have to find a way to return to that inside of us more so than um, enact
Mhm.
some sort of structural program outside of us that will just make sure that that happens, and then we don't have to
Yeah.
pay attention to it anymore. So there's that, and recognize that it's going to be kind of a long game, and that the best thing I think, if we are invested in trying to save this civilization from itself as individual members of it, the best thing we can do is to do the long, slow, hard work ourselves of trying to return to that natural place in ourselves, figure out what's going on, take a slow step back, start to undo whatever patterns, whatever it is, and come back, the enemy base is down, come back to that thing that's inside of us and recognize it's going to be a long time. But the good thing about long, hard work is that the results are usually very impressive and people are surprised. And if you show up and you're like, look, I've done this work for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I can speak to it to this depth. I can show you with my own presence and my own being what it's possible for a human to achieve. That's probably the only thing that's going to pull people out of the distraction, because you have to remember that they're miserable. I'm
Mm.
miserable. When I'm on Facebook, I'm miserable. When
Yeah.
I'm working too hard and I'm not taking care of myself, I'm miserable. And I see
Yeah.
somebody who's out there like genuinely enthused by their life. They're feeling inspired. I'm feeling inspired right now. I could probably watch this back and be like, wow, who's that guy? He's super cool. What are these guys up to? This is great. But just putting that representation out there, what's possible, then people see, oh, I don't have to chase happiness in these things with diminishing returns. There's a greater, how did you find this greater happiness that's possible? And then you have to say, well, it's a long, hard road and you can get there too. And maybe I can help you, but you kind of got to do it yourself and you got to be willing to put the work in over a long time to genuinely develop yourself as a person. And so there's that. But so that was all one thing. I said there were two things. That one was very long. The other one is very short. Um, to not get so blinded by that story that you discount the fact that miracles happen.
Yes.
That if you are in a Buddhist framework, if you're meditating for enlightenment, traditionally, enlightenment takes lifetimes. Dedicated practice, cultivation of virtue, cultivation of insight. Um, don't expect to be enlightened after a year of sitting on a cushion for a half hour every day, whatever. Go on a couple of retreats. Oh, I'm enlightened, maybe or maybe. But in the history of Buddhism, there have been people who have been suddenly enlightened, and that happens, and that you may say, okay, I'm ready for this work, this long work of self-development, and you do have to genuinely be ready for that. But who knows what's going to happen? Don't assume that you know, therefore, that it's going to be a long road. You don't know what's going to happen. You just dedicate yourself to it as much as you can and receive what your work cultivates in your life, and you don't control that, you know. There's a line in The Artist's Way book that quality is mine and quantity is God's. So I'm responsible for working, whether that's being creative and writing every day, or whether that's being an artist and drawing every day, or whether that's wanting to be a better person and trying to understand myself better every day. But the quality of my work, the how effective, how much understanding I generate, that's not up to me. I just have to
Yeah.
do the work, and the understanding will be given to me in response to my work and my need and my ability to put myself out there in a way that the good things have a reason to come through me because I'm trying to give them to people,
Mm.
you know?
And
Yeah.
that's, I wonder if also saying it's from God, it's like saying there's a grace to it. There's a luck factor, or just, yeah, it's not up to me. And
Yeah,
so
that's
just
true. I
kind of
don't
be
want to use the
grateful
God
for
language.
whatever. Hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, no, please. Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Yeah,
just saying,
you're
yeah, grateful for whatever comes up. So,
yeah. Yeah, because you're right, because the God language is effective from certain perspectives and is very ineffective because the word's been misused quite a bit.
mm,
But generally speaking, the way I'm using it, my intention there is the unknown. Is the
mm,
unknown, whether it's the unconscious, whether it's the source of cosmic reality, whether it's what, like, we don't know where we get ideas from. They just come
yeah,
to us. Where do they come from? Who knows? They come from somewhere. That's what I'm talking about,
yeah.
you know? Um, yeah, yeah.
That seems like a good attitude to have. And that, you do the work and it will have an effect. You don't know if you will, just to use an analogy, if you will only write a few short stories that only a few people will like, or if you'll write a bunch of novels that will be acclaimed all over the world. You just, you don't know what's going to come to you. You just, yeah, you have to do that Flannery O'Connor 2 hours of writing every single afternoon, or Stephen King's 8 hours, or whatever. You have to kind of work hard, sort of know who who you are and what you're doing, and be humble.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And be humble and be like, uncertain, like being like, I don't know. I guess I'm just saying like beginners, man, like being open to the unexpected that might happen. Um, excuse me. I feel like I had something else to say there, but I've kind of lost the thread on that. So,
Mm.
I'll just leave that lying.
Do you think all that stuff that you talked about is that will help you as much as you can to kind of be in touch with, but not be too enmeshed with the sort of crazy, complex, ever changing, emotionally draining world that we live in?
Hmm. Think like I think there's a danger of trying to wall yourself off from all of the chaos. Um, in that if you are genuinely trying to create something better than that, like, yes, you need to not be on Facebook 8 hours a day. You need to be dedicated to something. So you do have to kind of wall yourself off in that sense. But to the point where you're like, oh, this world is overwhelming, and I don't want to. I'm going to go live in a cave in the woods. Like, there's a and that might, some people might have to do that. You might be called to do that for a while. So I don't want to
Mm,
say that's inherently bad, but
mm,
as a solution, like, there's a danger there of no longer being in touch with the thing that you're trying to make the medicine for. Like, if you don't bring the medicine to the sickness, you're not going to cure the sickness. If you're not trying to develop as a person within the society, then when you've developed as a person, the only solution you can offer people is get the fuck away from society. But if
yeah.
you can manage to do it in a way that is in connection in society, then when you come back and you say, hey, like, this is what's possible, and they say, well, I'm stuck in the society, then you can say, well, so was I, and here's how I did it. But again, that takes a long time. That takes maybe a lifetime. Maybe it's not possible to get. We can imagine what's possible, but we might not be able to get there in our lifetime. But we don't know. We also don't know whether it is possible or not possible. So
Yeah.
we just gotta try the best we can. And I do also think, having said that, that like a sort of twin perspective to that is that the society and all of the chaos that we're sort of struggling with or worried about in this regard, that's the echo, that's the output, that's the result of generations upon generations of people who tried to cultivate themselves but couldn't do it. You know, so meaning like if we, as we are cultivating ourselves in this way, we already are, and we become a source of one of the streams that goes into creating this chaos around us. And so we don't want to ignore the chaos. We don't want to say it doesn't exist. We don't want to say, oh, it doesn't touch me, it doesn't affect me. But we do want to say, like, oh, this is the best response I can have to this is to let it be what it is and to find a way to cultivate myself as a node in this greater space and as a fountain or a provider of something good, so that it's almost like if we're all individual springs of water feeding into a lake and the lake is dirty, like you don't want to pull your spring out of the water and just create a bunch of pureness over here. You want to
Mhm.
bring your spring, open it up, bring pure water in, and that will sort of push some of the pollution or the stagnancy away. Um, but if you think you have to get rid of the stagnancy first before you can start generating something new,
Mhm.
you're never going to, because you're just always going to be like trying to wipe it aside, and it's always going to come back because you're fighting something that like you're trying to make something not exist that already exists rather than making something good start to exist.
Mhm.
Buckminster Fuller has a saying of like, I wish I could remember the exact quote. He has so many good things, but it's something like,
Mhm.
don't try and defeat your enemies or don't try and defeat problems, but build something that makes them obsolete.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think that is he was a wise man. And I talk
Wow.
about
I
somebody
didn't
who
know that.
like had a moment of
Wow.
rapid expansion. I mean, I don't know much. I don't have a lot of ready stories at hand about him, but he is an interesting guy to look up. So
Wow, I
definitely
should. I knew
recommend.
he was a
Yeah.
genius, but I didn't know he was
Yeah.
really wise. Wow.
Yeah. He has some really some very fruitful perspectives. Talk about philosophies insights that you take in and try and apply to your own life. He's got some really good ones. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to check him out. Do you know a book or is it
I wish I did. Um, I've only read like quotes of his. I've heard his work referenced. I have one or two books on my shelf to read one of these days.
yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I feel like I have a sense of the man, and I have a lot of respect for him, just from being able to sort of partake of the complexity and level of insight that he was able to achieve, and like in trying to apply that to my life, I'm like, oh wow, this is really useful. I mean, another thing he says that I remember is that like he doesn't know what he is, but he's pretty certain he's not a thing. He thinks he's probably more of a verb. Um, and if we are all just verbs, if we are all just activity that's happening, I mean, we don't even have the words for it exactly because English is such a thing-based language and the way we use it is so thing-based. But if we aren't a thing, we're just a process that's unfolding. There's a lot more freedom there and a lot less self-hatred, a lot less self-sticking condemnation of, oh, I'm a thing that is bad. I must be a better thing to.
I'm
It's just
supposed to
like,
be this thing. I'm not.
exactly. If instead of like, oh, well, I'm a process that's happening, and this process is happening in a non-ideal way, and maybe this process can take other things into account and do things differently. And it's just it's much more like in the moment. It's alive, and it's more mindful. It's more attentive to what's actually going on, instead of trying to abstract everything out into concepts and conditions and then arrange them in an ideal way. And then once we have that ideal way, try and make our life look like that.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time. It's never going to make us happy.
And so remember that your friends, other people, your partner, your wife or husband is also a verb. And
Yes.
they're not this idea or this ideal that fulfills all the needs that you as you see it that
Yeah.
you need to mold them into.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't tell my wife, but yes. Well, I mean, not don't tell her, but like I definitely do that to her a lot, you know. I think we all do that to the people we are closest to, and I think
Yeah.
it's not like I'm not shaming myself for it as in, oh, I'm a terrible person, but like I would like to stop. It's not fair to her. It doesn't make me any happier. It doesn't make us any happier. And I think it's a noble goal to have, to learn to try and see other people as actions or verbs or processes in their own right, and not some specific thing we need them to be, because then when they're that thing, we will be okay. And if we are okay, I mean, that's the definition of codependency right there. So
Yeah. Is one solution to not not trying to mold others to our needs is to have less needs?
I don't think so. I mean, less needs, sure, because you can definitely have too many. So if you have a lot and it's causing problems, like you wanna not have too many.
And
But
maybe less amount of those needs and your response to them.
I feel like we're getting into territory like with the cigarettes though, where you're like, my needs are a problem and I need to put them away. This cigarette smoking is unhealthy and I need to stop. But the alternative being like, oh, well, this need that I have is not seeming to be harmonious with this other person who I seem to need something from. So what am I not seeing clearly? You know, what can I put my attention on and investigate more so that my needs become more genuine, more natural, more
Hmm.
harmonic, more connected in a way that understands other people and can take them into account as who they are. And then the false needs will just kind of drop away because you'll be like, oh, this doesn't make me happy or anyone happy, and it doesn't really work. Like it doesn't, I'm chasing this thing, this need, because I think it's going to make me happy, but I see that one, it's not actually possible and to achieve that need. And even if I did, it wouldn't make me happy. But
Mm.
we have to actually see that. So there is some danger in being like, oh, well, I just need to have less needs because you're a process and you do have needs. Everything that's living depends on everything else that's living. And if you say, well, I don't depend on anything, that's actually one kind of arrogant. Well, I'm not saying you, but just as a
Mm.
philosophy, like it's an arrogant philosophy, and like you're starving yourself. You
Mm.
you run the risk of starving yourself, sort of a spiritual anorexia. I refuse to have needs. I refuse to acknowledge that I'm hungry. I refuse to acknowledge that I have desires. Because
Mm.
my desires are so scary, they're in the dark. I'd rather come over here where it's light and look over here,
Mm.
where everything makes sense. And all my needs are over in the dark. I don't want to deal with them. But
Mm.
if you can bring the light of your attention to them and start to um, sort of differentiate out what the needs are and where they're coming from, and link them in together. So like one of the problems, one of the like the obvious problems is like, well, I have a desire, I have a need to be in connection with this person who I care about, and I have a need to express myself in a way that they find problematic. So
Mm.
like our which one of those needs is wrong. Which one do you get rid of? Well, you can't really. You could say, "Oh, I'm going to break up with this person," and then maybe you're in another relationship and you find somebody who's great, and then you're like, "Okay, that was I was incorrectly attached to this person." Or you find yourself in another relationship and you find yourself in that same pattern again of, "Oh, this person doesn't make me happy. Oh, this person doesn't make me happy. Oh, this person doesn't make me happy," and then you're like, "Oh, well, maybe the need that I'm chasing for happiness, I don't understand it correctly." Because when I get the thing that I think is going to fulfill that need, it doesn't. And so it becomes an inquiry and a question of insight into your needs so as to refine them into something more objectively true,
Mhm.
rather than assuming that they already are what they are, assuming you already understand them correctly, and that they're either right or wrong.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. Kind of having a moderate and open and investigative approach to what you see as your needs and not sort of upholding them as always going to be true and something that I really need to fulfilled. And then yeah, also not going the to the other extreme of just trying to suppress them or ignore them, pretend they don't exist and everything. Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was kind of thinking for by saying having less needs. Because there's also so it's yeah, having a moderate approach. So there's just the volume is turned down because you're not exacerbating them or ignoring them. You're not building needs on top of the needs, you know, and you're not feeling an artificial sort of need to fulfill the needs. Sometimes you can kind of sit through the craving and just kind of ignore it and kind of be okay. You know, you're not suppressing it or whatever. So yeah, that's what I
Mhm.
was sort of thinking of. Maybe because it's part of the philosophy of our time to sort of sometimes to think of ourselves as I need to get my needs fulfilled.
Mhm.
And I think looking at people, this sort of what's that philosophy? It's like it's a type of conflict resolution, but 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 it's I forget what it's called, nonviolent communication, I think it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's the thing. Nonviolent communication. Yeah.
And I think that's a good approach for other people. Like if someone's angry, screaming obscenities, whatever, even almost getting violent or even getting violent or something. And I'm not saying just let them do whatever they want to, is, you know, nothing like that, but to help you to understand a little bit of what they're going through to where you can communicate and have it be a better situation, whatever level of better you can get to. It
Mhm.
seems like asking yourself what need are they expressing or do they have is a good way to shortcut through into something they're really experiencing rather than starting to get into your reaction like I'm afraid, now I'm going to get angry, now I'm going to try to win or something, you know.
Mhm.
But I think sometimes looking at ourselves too much as, yeah, a series of needs or something like that, sometimes where you can make the mistake of putting a need on top of those needs rather than taking a moderate, open, and investigatory, reflective approach to it.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think what's happening there, if you are putting a need on top of a need, the way you're talking about is like you're not going slow enough to understand what that first need is about. And so then you turn it into something else. And if you were able to take the time to put your attention on that first need and kind of understand what it is and what's going on there, you'd have a better idea of how to actually fulfill it. But if instead you're just like, oh, I need this thing, and so therefore I need this thing,
Yeah.
like this thing will
Yeah.
get me that thing.
That's
It's your
right.
yeah. It's just um it's expecting results where you're not going to get results, and so and then oftentimes we just double down on it. sort of as a
Yeah.
culture. That's kind of our tendency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned more than once going slow, and that Rousseau talks about that repeatedly, and I think that's important, and I think that's more natural, the kind of going slow and waiting, and it seems artificial yet to go fast. It's sort of like in an urban environment or something. It's all about going fast, getting things done, being productive, going from one thing to the next and hardly, maybe knowing what you're doing at the end.
Yeah. 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 It's like you actually have more time if you go slower. There's like a level of awareness you bring to things that um, has them be a lot less complicated and therefore simpler and easy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's a
that's right.
question of being able to bring that awareness. Yeah. Yeah. I forget that a lot. I'm very much in a like I have 50 things to do and time to do 20 of them kind of mode right now. And sometimes when I'm lucky, I remember like if I relax and if I soften my nervous system and if I don't worry and if I make room for breath, then the things that I'm doing are much more effective towards whatever end I'm trying to achieve. And I'm much better to handle whatever it is that's going on. Um, yeah,
I have to remind myself of that a lot to focus on this thing right now.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That seems the work, the training.
Yep. Yeah. And I think there's also an element there of like remembering the body and the senses and
Yeah.
the sort of embodied experience because we can get so hyper focused on a thing if we lose that anchor, then our attention gets too tied up in the thing and we may not notice other things that are important too. So kind of keeping that space, the body for me acts as a space that's both an anchor and an openness. So it allows for when I remember to pay attention to it, it allows for other things to be present in addition to the thing that I'm focused on.
Hmm.
So when I'm really paying attention to my body, if I get stuck on Facebook, I much more quickly notice, hey, I'm stuck doom scrolling, and this feels really crap in my body. What's going on? And that's enough of a break to get me to like put it down. But
Hmm.
if I don't remember to stay tuned to that sort of somatic space of my body, that sort of sensation of my body and everything that's going on there, um, just as a sort of buzz in the background, really. But if I don't pay attention to that, then I can very easily get sucked into a thing and completely not notice that it's this time of day. I have to do these things. My body's sore. I mean, even right now in this conversation, like I'm doing a pretty bad job of it. Like I'm like, oh man, it's 7:30. Oh, it's dark outside. Oh, I've been slouched and my back hurts, you know. But here I am talking about the body. I'm attending to the body, and all of a sudden I'm noticing all these other things that I had been missing. And it's a good thing to come back to because it makes space for everything else to be heard as well. It does that connective um natural harmonic thing in and of itself if we remember that it's already happening.
Yeah, that's kind of a profound kind of thing that I have a hard time grasping sometimes that everything is already happening, but I sort of have this faith that that is a very promising sort of idea or, I don't know if it's an idea, but there is kind of an idea there anyway, but yeah, that everything is already happening. And do you even find the idea of there not being free will kind of liberating thing? Because I do.
Um, yeah, free will, that's a whole thing. Like I think I how do I talk about this? Um, it's such a good question. I do find it freeing. Um, and I don't think we have free will in the way that we think we have free will, but I also don't think that things are determined the way we think they are determined.
Hmm.
We often set up this like false dichotomy of like, well, either I get to decide what I want to do or what happens to me just happens to me and there's no say I have in the matter.
Hmm.
And like to the first person, I would say like even if it's true that you can just do whatever you want to do, you can't choose what you want.
Yeah.
It becomes infinitely recursive at that point. Like you can't you cannot just decide, oh, well, I don't want this thing. I want this other thing instead and change that. So we're not free to choose what we want. We're maybe free to go after what we want. We're free to investigate what we want. We're free to decide whether we want what we want. But if it's just I can do what I want, you're a slave. You're a slave to what it is,
Hmm.
whatever the desire is that's happening, and you're not taking the time to ascertain whether it's true for you or not, and what other options there might be, and what the situation is, and what's called for.
Hmm.
Um, but to the second person who says everything's predetermined, I would say like, well, then why bother do anything? Why bother tell me that? Why? I mean, you very clearly could keep your mouth shut and not say anything. Why get out of bed? Why eat? Why do anything? Like
Hmm.
there is a willful action that's required of us, but that doesn't mean that we get to choose 100% our situation. And it doesn't mean that we get to choose 100% what our desires are, what the motivation, what's driving us. We don't get to choose that. That's a felt sense. We can attune to it or we cannot. We can choose not to, but we don't get to pick what it is. In the sense of like I can just make it up and then that's the thing that it's going to be. Like we have to make up a thing and then feel a resonance and be like, that feels important.
Hmm.
And then we choose to chase that feeling of importance. But the thing that we can do is accurately attend to the situation, accurately attend to what's inside of us, and then the choice becomes what do we do about that? How
Hmm.
do those two things want to work together? And they will just work together on their own, which sort of precludes free will, but they work together on their own to the extent that our attention has created space for them to interact the way they need to, and we don't get in the way of it.
Hmm.
Ultimately, all we can choose to do is get in the way or attend to it so well that we're no longer there to get in the way.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that sounds like a good kind of Buddhist answer, and I'm kind of in line with that.
yeah, yeah. 'Cause I don't think free will exists the way a lot of people think it does, but I also don't think that the people that disagree with it, like you'll see people who say that they're measuring the brain and I don't know, they're measuring like the muscle response or something, but they'll say like, oh, the your arm muscle twitched to move towards a thing before the neurons went off in your brain. I forget there's some science guy that like that's his big argument against free will.
Hmm. It's not Sapolsky, is it?
I don't think so. If anything, I would think maybe it was somebody Sapolsky got in an argument with, but I'm
Hmm.
not sure. I don't know a lot. I know of
Hmm.
Sapolsky, but I don't know his work, so I
Hmm.
can't speak to it.
Hmm.
I want to say maybe David Dennett,
Hmm.
maybe. But again, not familiar with him, can't
Hmm.
really speak to it. But I know that there's sort of this common trope of like, oh, well, your arm's already reaching for a thing before your brain fires.
Hmm.
And then that proves that like the motor function is just happening, and your free will is just this after effect that your brain puts on top of the motor function that's just going to happen.
Hmm.
And like the problem I see with that is like we don't know what will is. We think it means the brain's firing a certain way, but we don't know what the experience is of like the thing that's reaching for like that's the body has its own will. It's doing a thing. The
Hmm.
brain is working to sort of police the body to rein it in a little bit. If it's like, oh no, we don't that thing's hot. We don't want to touch that thing,
Hmm.
you know. But who's to say that will only lives in the brain?
Yeah,
Why
that's
is it
kind of
just the brain? It's so localized. We have our whole nervous system. Our whole nervous system is always in response in communication and in a dance with the reality around us,
Yeah. Yeah,
why
it kind
isn't
of
that free
set
will?
Will up in this certain way and then said, "Hey, it doesn't exist."
It doesn't exist because the
So,
thing you're talking about isn't real. Your argument's based on a fallacy. Sorry, bud. Yeah.
yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, and it feels hopeless to think, "Oh, my arm's already reaching," because my arm is just an alien thing to me, but my brain is who I am. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But
There's
then,
that
oh wait, no,
alienation
I
again.
am my
Yeah.
arm too. Then I am doing that thing. Then now I feel fine again.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now there's no problem. Now there's no problem. Yeah, because if you're looking, yeah, because you're like what we're talking about there is that natural sense of like the tree and the roots and the water and the dirt and the sun. It's like, oh, the brain and the muscles in the arm and the nervous system and the gut and the eyes, like all of that's already working on its own the way it's already doing a thing. And
Yeah,
we can pay attention to it, in which case it will change the rate at which that thing is moving. It'll change the direction. If we, if we're the obvious thing, we're sort of on autopilot, we're walking, we step into the street, we get hit by a car, right? If we're paying attention, we don't step, we see the car, we don't step into the street. That's every moment of our life is like that. Like if we are paying attention to a certain thing, then this sort of quote unquote automatic behavior, this dance that our nervous system is doing with the reality around us, if we pay attention, the whole thing works better. It
yeah,
works more holistically as long as we're not forcing or trying to change something. If we're just attending to it, if we're stewarding ourselves, then the whole thing will start to work better. Um, but if we separate one part from another and just have one part acting on another, then we're just stuck in this conceptual framework, and we're not attending to anything that's actually going on.
yeah,
We're just dreaming. We're just asleep and we're dreaming. You know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that, I mean, consciousness may be, yeah, part of that whole thing that we are, and it's bringing certain things to consciousness because we need to attend to them. But
Yeah.
then, yeah, with our concepts, maybe we've turned consciousness, or think of it as the soul or something like that, into the only thing that is real about us, and everything else is this meat package. And
Mm.
yeah, and then we've gotten, yeah, since the consciousness is the only real thing, then I'm sort of trapped in my body. And then when my hand is moving before my brain fires, then uh, yeah, there's no such thing as I'm not really, there's no me in the world, and I'm there's no connection of me in the world, and I'm not connected to the world, and my life means nothing, and there's no morality, there's no good and evil, and there's no truth, and
Yeah.
life is
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah. And there's the stereotypical postmodern existentialist nihilist worldview right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't like it's all based on a false understanding of what's going on and then agreeing that that false understanding is correct and then being really sad that that's the way things are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just something like projection.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, sounds good. So maybe anything else you want to say, or
No, I think I think you called it. I think this is a good place to stop. I'm sure we could keep going, but this feels like a really nice kind of a peak, you know?
yeah, for me too.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
So
But yeah,
maybe
well,
next week we'll try another folk tale, or go back to Robin Hood, and
I think folktale. I think that one that you brought up from the von Schoenworth collection, that one, I'm not quite sure what to say about it, but it's very interesting.
okay.
So
Yeah, I'm glad you
yeah,
liked it. Yeah, so
yeah,
yeah, we'll probably talk about that one.
sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay. Sounds good.
So.